Thank you for joining the People's Review Live, hosted by Equality State Policy Center. We work on fair elections and transparent government. And one of the ways we help our government to be more transparent is by hosting these webinars for citizens to be able to look in and get their questions answered and get an overview of how these processes work because they can be very complex. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Kate Wilmot. ESPC has been so lucky to have this intern working with us for the month of January, enabling us to do this webinar before she heads off her final semester at Middlebury College. We have her tonight. So with that, Kate?
Thank you for those introductions, Jenny. I'm really excited to introduce you all to our panelists for the evening. First, we have Senator Ogden Driskill with us here, who represents Senate District 1 and has done so since 2011. He currently serves on the Joint Appropriations Committee and has previously served as Senate President, Senate Majority Floor Leader, and Senate Vice President. We also have with us Senator Mike Gierau from Senate District 17. He is also a current member of the Joint Appropriations Committee and serves as the Senate Minority Floor Leader. And finally, Steph Kessler is here with us. Steph's a former Fremont County Commissioner and a Lander School Board member, as well as a longtime public interest lobbyist with decades of experience at the Wyoming State Legislature. She's also the former chair of the ESPC Board. Thank you all for being here with us today. We're really excited to have you here and are very grateful for your participation. To set the stage, we're going to begin with kind of a series of questions and discussion with our panelists about the budget session and ways that citizens can engage. And then we'll wrap up with some Q&A. The Q&A feature is enabled, so feel free to post your questions in there, and then we'll look at those at the end. So to start us off, I'd like to kind of start with a broad question to help set the context for all of our panelists, which is, why is it important for people to follow the state budget session, especially this year? Senator Gierau, would you like to lead us off?
Sure, Kate, and thanks. Thanks for having us, and thanks everybody for joining. Why is it important? Well, I mean, the budget for the state of Wyoming that we're currently working on right now is, from my point of view, a statement about who we are and what we believe. A lot of times politicians like myself will talk in platitudes and talk in, generalities about what we want and what we don't want and what we say we strive for and we say we don't strive for. If you really want to find out what what your government is thinking, take a look at their budget. Take a look at what they spend their money on. As a former city councilman, a former county commissioner, and now 8 years on the Appropriations Committee, I can tell you it's all about the budget. It's always all about the budget. You want to find out what your government is thinking about and what's important to them. Take a look at how they spend their dollars, not about what they say on the floor. And, they're wringing their hands. Oh, what about the kids? What about this? What about that? Well, look at the budget. So that would be my thing, Kate.
Thank you. Senator Driskill? I think you're muted. Sorry, Senator.
Yeah, Senator Gierau got it dead on. The budget really is our main policy statement, and it really is the message we send out to the people of Wyoming, how we're spending money, what we're going to do, and how we're going to enact those policies. And so the budget is the part I really like that Senator Gierau said is pay attention to what happens on the floor with the budget, not the rhetoric that you get to see around, because you're going to hear all kinds of things that the sky's falling or things are great, and it's really not what you think it is. Our budget's online. It's really easy for anybody to look at it themselves. It's the exact same budget we work with. And so you can pull it up. And if you see things that are happening for us, you can get a hold of us and say, hey, it hurts my city. It hurts my town. It hurts my family. And that's really what we respond to is we're here to use taxpayer dollars to make Wyoming a better place for the people of Wyoming.
Wonderful. Thank you, Senator. And Steph, do you have anything to add?
I would probably echo what you've heard. I think of a budget as our Wyoming values document. What do we care about? What do we want to invest in? And it may seem wonky, but it is one of the most important things for people to invest in and communicate with their legislators about. It's kind of like your family home budget. So think about what's important to you, and you want to make sure it gets invested. I also think this is the most consequential legislative session that I've seen in decades. I've actually been a lobbyist since 1991. And I would say this is one that's really going to determine the future of our state. So it's great that everybody's online and paying attention, and just think about it as it's about our Wyoming values, and what we care about and engage.
Wonderful. Thank you all. I think that's a really helpful way to frame why this session especially matters. Next, we really want to touch on kind of the more procedural aspects of the budget session. So I'll turn it over to you, Senator Gierau, for a bit of a walkthrough on how the process actually works.
Okay, thanks, Kate. The budget is a biennial budget, so it's a 2-year budget, and we're going to what has happened up to now, and that's what I'm going to take you to, how it started to today, and then Senator Driskill is going to kind of take you beyond that. But how it works is basically this. In the summer, all the departments, and there's over 100 departments in state government, they put together their budgets for the next 2 years. They present them and work with the governor and his staff, and the governor compiles a biennial budget for the state of Wyoming, which then he delivers to the legislature in the middle of November, just before Thanksgiving. And that budget is his vision, like we just talked about in our question, his vision for the next 2 years for the state of Wyoming. And he called it the essentials. And just to go back one more step, last year we had a supplemental budget. We usually in an off year, not a budget year like this year, we have a supplemental budget, one we didn't pass last year. So we didn't have any supplemental budget last year. So this year's budget is kind of a little bit of catch up from last year and then for the next 2 years. So we presented that budget in November, and then the 1st of December, the Joint Appropriations Committee, and that's 7 members from the House and 5 members from the Senate, meet in Cheyenne. And we start with the governor's office, and the governor presents the budget and then presents his budget for his office and his staff. And then then each department comes in and tells the Joint Appropriations Committee their vision in each of their budgets, what the governor's recommended, maybe a few things he didn't recommend that they'd still like to see us put in. And then we work through each of the budgets, and some of the bigger ones, when we have questions, we'll ask first, and then we'll do what we call callback, and we'll call the department heads back if we have more questions or if we've gotten some information from someone after they've given their testimony. We finish in the last week, in the middle of January, the last week of we do 2 weeks before Christmas and then 2 weeks right after the first of the year. And the last week we do what we call markup. There's where we take the governor's budget and all the comments, all the testimony we've heard from all the department heads, the callbacks, everything else, and then we go through the budget ourselves and we make proposals and turn it from the governor's budget into the JAC budget, the Joint Appropriation Committee budget. And that's where we are today. Today, we have, through that period, we have gone through the budget, and the Joint Appropriations Committee has weighed in and made changes. And this year, substantial changes in a lot of respects, so which we'll get to. But that's where we are today. That's how it starts, and that's where we are today. So we've got a budget that's been written by the governor and come through his office and his team. The Joint Appropriations Committee has now looked at it, and now I'll turn it over to Senator Driskill, and he can maybe, or Kate, whatever you want to send it, but he can take us the rest of the way.
Thank you. He left me to deliver the kind of interesting news of what's gone on, which is very, very democratic of you, Mike. Uh, I'll back up just a tiny bit on the governor's budget. So it's kind of built in two pieces if you go wandering through the book. And one of it's the base budget, and that's where the base spending of the agency's at. And then there's a supplemental lays on top of it. And that's what they've asked for in addition to what their budget is. And as we go through markup, what we do is tell the governor where we agree and disagree with his budget. And kind of where we're at right now, the key areas that have kind of fallen into maybe 4 or 5 different areas. And, I think a lot of people know it, but I'll kind of run through the key areas. And, interestingly enough, the governor's budget had in excess of 500 million excess revenue that was there that was available for the state to spend in whatever way. And for whatever reason, and I won't pick bones, but the committee chose to cut, even though we had 500 million of surplus money, they chose to continue to cut further to save for perceived dark clouds in the future. And, we went into quite a lot of cuts into healthcare. Obviously, everybody's heard the Business Council was totally defunded and made to go away. About $60 million of cuts to UW, 20 million out of their standard block grant that they get, another 40 million of the supplemental, including Division One sports end that we need to stay in Division One. We cut some healthcare funding to the Native Americans that was kind of a critical piece that didn't make a lot of sense. Public radio, public TV, which affects a good part of the people. Both of them have their budgets either gone or slashed. So it is without a doubt, we've all heard, and I'll just say it up front, we've heard about the Freedom Caucus and what they want to do. And we got to see the first shot over the bow of what they do when they're in control. And it was to massive slash to the budget. And then Senator Gierau and I also quizzed them quite heavily on what they were planned on to do with the money that they were saving. And they absolutely refused to put any of it into permanent savings. They want to put it all into what's called the LISRA, our legislative stabilization account, more commonly known as the rainy day account. And that'll make that have a huge bubble in it if that happens. Obviously, they probably have plans for the money, but nobody really disclosed it. So the budget for us, is really interesting as members. Senator Gierau and I were in the minority for a big part of the session, but our job is, when we go to the floor, is to represent the Senate's position on the appropriations. So you'll see us defending the budget that came out as it was. Input from the public is probably going to be more important than ever on the budget and where it goes. The subsequent end of it, when we're all done marking the budget up, then we will go through 3 readings on it, just like normal. And in the second and third reading, we allow individuals to do amendments to the budget. And these are really critical. It's important for the public to watch them. These are both adding to the budget and subtracting from the budget. And when those are all finished and we're all done, then the Senate votes on the budget and the House will vote on the budget. And then it will go to a conference committee that is picked by the President of the Senate and Speaker of the House that will negotiate the differences between those 2 items. Once they've reached an agreement on where they're at, assuming they do, it goes back to both individual bodies to pass it. Once they've passed it, assuming they do, then it goes to the governor for his signature. And the governor on a budget can line item veto. So he can take a pen and literally strike out anything that makes sense in the budget. He can't add anything with it, but he can take pieces out. And then once it's done, if he signs it, then the budget's law. If he does not sign it, if he vetoes it, then it goes back to the body for a veto override, just like our normal process. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both for that kind of overview of the process. I think that sets us up well because next I want to turn to citizen engagement and kind of strategies for people to learn more and stay involved. So Steph has prepared some resources and information to help people follow and engage with specific issues during the process. So I'll turn it over to her now. Thank you, Steph.
So I was asked about ways that citizens can track and engage in budget issues during the session. Um, First, I can't not point out how important this is because this budget session is setting up what you're going to be slammed with come election time with all of these flyers. And this slide points out all of the out-of-state interference that is going on in our legislature and decisions right now. And you can see that there's groups that will be mailing voters about the legislative session from Texas, from New Jersey. Sorry, that's Virginia. It should be New Jersey, and another group from California. So this is the stakes. And this legislative session is going to directly feed into this out-of-state money coming in and trying to tell Wyoming voters what to think and do in their elections. So how do you know what's going on in the legislature? I think the most important thing to do is actually read a couple of online sources of information. You can skim it and check them out, but they're Wyophile and Cowboy State Daily. They really cover the legislature well, and they'll give you insights to what's going on and all the hot topics. Cowboy State Daily is a little weird to find their opinion pieces, so I've just shown it here. Once you get to the side, you can click on a group of topics that are on their page and then click to opinion. And there are a variety of opinion columns that you can then check in on. And those are becoming very pertinent to what's going to happen in the legislature soon. So that's a great way to get an overview of what's coming up. Tracking the budget can be very difficult. It's even hard for lobbyists who are there in person. So one of the best things to do is actually to connect with a group that's going to be tracking the core issues you're interested in, and they will tell you what's going on and send you alerts. So if you're interested in what's happening down there in education, then reach out to the Wyoming Education Association. You can get alerts from them. About election and voting, ESPC, the group we're with now, Public Lands and Wildlife, the Wyoming Wildlife Federation is another great group. Healthcare, you can go to Healthy Wyoming. And then for a variety of issues, I've listed some others there that cover many things. Tax issues aren't necessarily like immediate. They're going to send you an email if something comes up, but you can go to the Wyoming Taxpayers Association and get weekly updates on their website. So definitely sign up and use these alerts because they're going to help you track things. Tips for engaging with your legislators pre-session is so important. Try to talk to people now. Invite your rep for coffee, pull together an event with other friends. You can send them an email now too and talk about what your priorities are for the budget session. And it will get their attention because they get very, very busy during the session and get hundreds of emails and may not be able to engage as much with you. Obviously, during the session, there are many ways, emails, texts, calls. I'll show you where you can find that information to reach people. You can also testify remotely online, and you can visit Cheyenne and testify in person. And that really has a lot of potency connecting directly with folks. You can visit legislators and lobby them or attend receptions. This is a picture of a group that I worked with called Camo at the Capitol. And it's just really fun to do this with a bunch of people. And so you can sign up and attend one of these. There's another one there I've listed, but there's many others depending upon the group that you might be interested in. Find out through that interest group. Um, I'm going to skip through this because I just realized we don't have enough time. But be concise in your messaging when you talk to legislators. They're just so crazy busy. Get to the point. I have a 3-sentence rule for effective emails, which is first, ID who you are so they know you're not a bot. State your position and request, and then you can add a personal connection at the end. So here's an example. I'm writing you as a constituent. I live in Fremont County. Make that connection. Please vote for whatever it is you want to say and be clear about it. And then you can then add your personal opinion, just one sentence. Don't get too wordy and say what you want to use to convince them or share your values and thank them. Um, oof, this is how it goes. It is crazy. Um, so the good news is that we're going to have the opportunity for an introduction vote, not for budget issues, but for other legislative topics in bills. And hopefully it's supposed to clear the deck so we can focus more on budget topics. It doesn't always happen though. So lots goes on, lots of opportunities to engage. I think of budget sessions as fast and furious or Kill Bill, because there's a lot of bills that get killed very early on. And this just shows you what's going to be happening. And I think the most important thing is the budget gets started on Thursday, February 12th. They continue it on Friday. By the end of that very first week, bills die because they have not passed a 2/3 vote for introduction. So they have to get over that barrier to even get into the session. And then you'll see the next week we start working on the budget bill. Second reading, you'll see my little pizza symbol in there. These usually go very late. People call in pizza and they're working on the floors late at night, still working on these. And once the House and the Senate each finishes their version, then they switch in the middle of the session by the third week. And they actually don't work each other's bills, but they go right to a conference committee for the budget. And that is 5 people appointed from each side, the House and the Senate. And those folks are supposed to start negotiating the differences between the Senate and the House versions. And often there are huge, huge differences. Sometimes they can't agree at all, and they go forever to try to make decisions about reconciling the House version with the Senate version. And you just see that these are the deadlines that they've got to finish this work. One of the best legislative resources in the country is our own WyoLeg website. And I'm going to now try to get you that now. We really have one of the best legislative resource websites in the country. And it's just at wyoleg.gov, and you can find almost anything you might need here. The appropriations bill, the budget bill for 2026 has not been filed, so you can't see it yet. So I've pulled up, I've pulled up the one from 2 years ago. It's 160 pages. It's a lot of work. So you want to go find the agency or department or area that you're most interested in to tune into that. But what I really wanted to point out is the amendment process. That's when the work really begins on the budget. And I'm just going to scroll through this so you can see in 2024 on the House side, in second reading, which is where they start doing budget amendments, I believe they had 80 of them. That is a huge amount of material to go through as a regular citizen. So that's why you want to hook up with an interest group that is representing your concerns and they can clue you into what's happening, so that you don't have to every day, when these come up, scroll through. And I just want to open up one of them to show you how complicated it can be. I'm going to pull up an amendment. Sorry, it's number 72 here. Okay. This is what one of those amendments look like. Now you can see it's like page 104. This goes back to the regular budget bill. They're deleting like everything from lines 15 through 28. It is really difficult to be going through maybe 80 amendments in a day and then having to go back and look through the 160-page budget and try to figure out what is going on as a citizen. That's why it's really key to sign up for alerts from groups that are going to tell you what's happening so that you don't have to be scrolling through this every day. And instead, they will clue you in as to what to look for. So I'm trying to think. I think, I don't know if I've gone over my time, but I just want to point out that it's important to hook up with some kind of interest group that's going to represent your interests and alert you when something is coming up. The other thing that happens is while this is going on the House side, this is a House bill, the Senate is working at the same time on their own bill. So to try to track between the two bodies is very difficult as well. And again, I just want to show how many amendments there are in a budget session. So it's complicated. It happens fast. And my advice is to hook up with a trusted nonprofit or advocacy group that's representing your issues, and they will clue you in to the most key things that are going on during the session that you can chime in on.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Steph. And kind of on that note, after this event, we'll be sending out just kind of a resource sheet to help you in identifying some nonprofits to start. So keep an eye out for that in your inboxes. But we just have just two more questions for the panelists, and then we'll move on to Q&A. To begin, we have one more question for the senators. Thinking about Wyoming's future workforce, and as a soon-to-be college graduate myself, are there any elements of the state budget that are designed to support or attract early career professionals to Wyoming? Senator Driskill, if you want to start us off.
There is, but it's primarily the main ones we have would probably be through our community college and the college. As far as the base attraction end of it, part of that would have gone back to the business council that's kind of in limbo at this point in time. Really what we try to do is create an environment to attract the people more than actually attract them. But we try to, at least from my end, try to make Wyoming a attractive spot for people to go to, which means good highways, good health care, good education. That's generally what someone looks for when they're coming.
Thank you. And Senator Gierau, do you have anything to add or no?
Yeah, Senator Driscoll is absolutely right. I think that when you talk about, once again, this is a statement, as we've all talked about, a statement of values, and so you look at and remember, K-12 funding and that is handled separately. The budget right now, what we've dealt with is, for the community colleges, the University of Wyoming, capital construction for schools and whatever. So when you look, at for example, for the University of Wyoming, um, I think frankly, and I will opine, but I think that the committee, um, with their cuts, the 40 million out of the block grant, is going to send a message to would-be students that I don't think that we want to send. It's a message that says that we don't care. It's a message that says that we're not going to fund basic educational needs for our university, and that should scare people, and it should bother people. It bothers me a lot, and so then you look at community colleges, same. They made some token advances toward in CTE and some other things for kids going into junior colleges, and they have. But overall, I think the message is fairly bleak. Once again, as the senator said, the governor gave us a good budget. The governor gave us a balanced budget, and you're going to hear a lot about this. So I want to talk about this in general terms. You're going to hear a lot about a fiscal cliff. You're going to hear a lot about, oh, we're running out of money. Absolutely nothing could be further from the truth. The governor gave us a good budget, a balanced budget, and a budget that actually had 125 million going into the permanent mineral trust fund and 125 million going into the common school fund. Those are off the table. Not only did they, as Ogden said, they cut budgets so that they put the money into places where they can grab it and do something else with it. And that should concern everyone greatly. When they cut budgets and then they put money into places where they can grab it and do something else with it. And then they don't say what that is exactly. So we've got some, so if you're a young person wanting to come here, I think this is where you need to chime in. And as Steph Kessler was saying, there's a lot of local meetings. I know I've got one tomorrow with my Chamber of Commerce. I've got one next week with all our local officials that's online, and but you're available to tune in all day. And that's in Teton County. But I know in each county, I know I talked to Senator Crago, was off tonight to because he called with some questions about the budget that he's going off to in Johnson or in Sheridan that he was going to tonight. And so these are happening right now in real time this week. So this is a great time, as Steph said, to reach out and talk to people and don't get too mystified by the process. Just tell us what you want. I think her little 3-line thing with say the name, say you're a constituent, and then say, I want this. I want you to do this. And then, they'll get the message. Every member of the House is up for election, and half of us in the Senate are up for election as well. So, I say, tell them you're a constituent, tell them you're a voter, and tell them you're going to be voting these issues come November and come the in August and the primary especially. So let them know what you think, and that's the best way I think that you can affect this, and get the things that we want to get.
Also, ask them what they think so you can see what their attitude is, because it's really important. You'll see one thing on that piece of paper Steph talked about. You'll see one thing on the paper, and then you'll see them do a different thing on the floor, and they'll actually say, I didn't do that. And it's really important that you track and do it and put them on the spot and say, where are you at on this? Where are you going to vote? Doesn't mean you're going to bully them into voting that way, but you'll know where they're at. And that matters when you go to the poll the next year. If they're beating the heck out of things you love, you probably ought to take your mother and your daughter and your friends to the polls with you to vote and say, look, we want something different.
Wonderful. Thank you both for your comments there. And I want to take this moment to thank all of our panelists for their participation. We've got one more question, and I do want to offer a brief reminder to our attendees to put questions in that Q&A box because we'll be moving on to that shortly. But for all of our panelists, as the budget process moves forward and decisions are made, what would you encourage citizens to keep in mind about the role of public participation? I know we've touched on this a little bit, but if you have any kind of final thoughts to offer as well, this would be a great time. I don't know if anyone is particularly inclined to lead us off.
I'll start. It's a hands-on sport. I would say, get online. The legislative website lets you listen to live testimony. You can see how your representative or senator actually speaks on the floor, how forceful they are on issues. You can look up the agendas on it, and come show up. You can do it online. The online testimony, if you're doing it, you need to be at 5 o'clock the night before generally to sign up for it. If you show up in the room, you get assigned the sheet and do it. I will tell you the best lobbyists in the world are citizens. They're not paid lobbyists. They're people that show up representing their own interests. If you come from the bottom of your heart and say what you want, it will be listened to dearly. And I've seen many committee meetings that 2, 3, 4 people will move a meeting in a whole different direction by speaking from the bottom of their heart. If you've got a loved one that's being affected by a health department bill, you've got a student in school that's being affected by it, whatever it is, when you come and you speak your piece, it makes a difference. And I can tell you, for me, that comes ahead of any paid lobbyist of any fashion that we get.
Yep, I couldn't agree more with Senator Driskill. And boy, it really is right. You've gotta hold us accountable for what we're voting on and what we're thinking. Ask the questions. Because let me give you an example. This comes straight from a meeting I was in just a couple of months ago. And they say, well, you're a conservative like me. You don't want to have any more government than we can afford. Everyone can agree with that, can't you? And we want to make sure that that our values are represented, because we're values and we're Christian people, and we believe in God, and we believe in those things, and we believe in the Second Amendment. We believe in your right to have a gun. We're hunters and sportsmen. Well, God, I think about 85% of people can agree with that. That is what the Freedom Caucus says in their town hall meetings. Now, they are in control of the process we just went through in the budget. Now you see what they believe. Cuts. The University of Wyoming, $40 million out of the block grant, which will cripple them. 100 people or more will get laid off if this cut goes through. The Business Council, pro-business, forget about it. Gone. Absolutely knifed like in a bar fight. I mean, they're gone. They're done. It's over. Economic development in this state, we talk about it. They talk about it. Gone. Over. That's what they do. And then you hear what they say and believe in the town hall meetings sounds great. So you need to hold them accountable for the votes they're taking. These folks took these votes, and now, as the senator said, and it was 9-3. Senator Driskill, myself, and Trey Sherwood from the House side voted against a lot of these cuts. And most of the time the votes were 9-3. This is a majority of both the House and the Senate's view of what our budget should be. And if it's not your view, you need to get on the phone. And boy, I couldn't agree more. Showing up in Cheyenne, you want to talk about scaring the crap out of everybody? Show up. Walk into a meeting, sit in the audience, sit outside, write a note, say, hey, I want to talk to you. You just took a vote in there. I'm your constituent. What was that all about? It rocks them right down to their core. And if you want to see an example of it, just go back and watch Tribal Relations Committee this week. They cut funding for Indian health by $58 million. It was federal funds. It was just a pass-through. They weren't cutting any state money for doing that. And they did it with malice and forethought. You watch the tapes. We all talked about it. Senator Driskill said, you're going to own this vote. And they voted for it. And then all of a sudden, the folks at the Indian tribal meeting were picketing outside. And I tell you what, they changed their tune in a nanosecond. And all of a sudden, there's Chairman Bayer saying, "Oh, it was just a mistake. We were just doing something for the, oh, golly Moses. No, we were just waiting for the final numbers to come in." It's a lie. I've never said that before about another legislator, but I'm saying it this time. I was on in both rooms, and I'm telling you, it was a lie. And it got caught because the people showed up. The tribe, our tribal brothers and sisters showed up and they said, "That, the hell with that." And it got changed. And so it
That
was,
one's easily verifiable too. The entire video's online of the Probst meeting of it, and the entire tribal relations is online. And Senator Grew is absolutely correct. They were told what the consequences were. They were told exactly what was happening. And they came back out in front of Cowboy State and made the statement, absolutely no problem. We didn't understand, blah, 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 blah. It was pointed out clearly to them.
Well, Steph, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just want to say that I think this coming session and the election that follows it is going to be the most important in our state's history because it's a decision about whether we allow out of state interests to come in and take over our state with their out of state priorities and marching orders that they're getting from other groups, or if Wyoming people assert their ownership over what we care about and what we want to fund in our budget. And we don't buy, frankly, the out of state barrage of BS that will come after this. And you know that the Freedom Caucus will be setting up votes in order to eventually campaign on them. And we all have to be smarter than they are and call them out and stay true to what are our Wyoming priorities. And I can't emphasize enough too, as you've heard, we have money in this budget. We have anywhere from $250 million to $500 million in excess funds. We manage our money very well in this state. And the governor's budget was a very balanced budget. So the cuts that we're seeing are due to out-of-state interests just telling the Freedom Caucus bloc what to do. And as you saw with the tribal health thing, they had to backpedal as fast as they could and come up with another story to explain their mindless following of orders. And it is orders. And I just want to give a big call out to Senator Driskill and Gierau and Trey Sherwood because watching that panel of 12 people, they were the only 3 people that were thinking independently like Wyoming folks treasure and believe in, is that we were independent thinkers and we don't take orders from people outside the state. And that's what's going on. And our budget is our values document. It's what we care about in the state. It's not just numbers. So I encourage everyone to stay engaged as much as you can. Hook up with any nonprofit that really represents your passions, whether it be in education or in health or anything, and they will help you stay connected because it's a very, very busy process to try to monitor.
So quickly, we caught them speeding on the Native American deal. Unbelievable, caught them. Perfect example for all of you out there to understand. When somebody catches them and the public pressure comes on, all of a sudden the stances change. And so you got to see firsthand. If they wouldn't have shown up, Senator Grew talked about the protest at tribal relations. If there'd have been no one there to protest, my guess is they'd have doubled down and stuck behind them. There was a question there, what will we do to fix it? The Freedom Caucus will fix it themselves. There are going to be a lot more curveballs. I'd encourage people to really watch the budget appropriations closely. There's going to be surprises coming. We know there is. They've shown their true colors. They truly, if they ever get control, they will gut Wyoming's backbone in their budget to the core. It's very easy to see what's happening. If you've got the time, you can watch through the Probst meeting. You get to see it was scripted. They actually had to stop the meeting multiple times to go back in so they could tell the people how to answer questions, because the person making the budget cut never understood what they were doing. And that's something I've never seen. I've been on a Probst before. Budget cuts do not come from a script or budget additions. They generally come for Senator Gierau raises his hands and says, I'd really like to do something for the community college in Jackson, and I'd like to add this number of dollars for it. And then he explains why he's doing it. Or if he wants to cut something, he says, I think we have waste here. I'd like to cut that. That did not happen this way this year. It's the first time in my life I've seen the budget run that direction. And I encourage everybody to look, because it really shows. If you actually watch it happening, you can see it. They'll tell you that we have no script. We don't follow a script. It's all spontaneous. It shows, and it's easy to tell.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for your insights and for sharing your expertise. I think we'll move on to Q&A. We've been getting some great questions in. The first one we had was, would the proposed budget cuts affect the University of Wyoming family medicine clinics in Cheyenne and Casper, which provide community health care and support physician residency programs? Senator Gierau, would you like to?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. And though when I was looking, and yes, they did cut I believe two positions, and Senator may have helped two positions out of the Casper Health Clinic. And I don't know if, I'm sure that it's not that big of a clinic, so I think that really cuts it back to the bone. And so that cut's been made, not in Cheyenne, but in the Casper Clinic. It was like a $286,000 drop in their funding. And both those clinics do provide essential functions for people in those communities. And that's just another one of those things that they work towards a number. It seemed to be the way it was scripted out. And they wanted to get to a number below the governor's budget. And over half of it, was frankly done with a parlor trick. They took, and I don't get too far in the weeds, but they took school construction and capital construction, which was close to $1 billion, took it out of the budget and put it in a bill. Well, it didn't cut anything at all. It just moved it. But they said, well, that was a big cut. But all the rest, the 300 million plus that they did cut, were in three areas: business council, UW, state employees pay. Were three basic areas where they literally turned their back on those groups. And very, very disheartening stuff. And so, yes, I think once again, I think the clinics in Casper and Cheyenne are pivotal, and they're important. And the one in Casper got cut.
Thank you for your response to that question, Senator. Another question posed was, how can voters identify legislators who are in the Freedom Caucus? If any of you could.
That's pretty simple. You can actually go to the Freedom Caucus website and they list it. But probably the very best is there's an editorial on Cowboy State out there that named them all. They did an article on who was Freedom Caucus, who leaned. That's one of the really sad parts about it. They preach freedom and transparency, but their members are anonymous. So they self-identify, and the main group of them self-identify. But there's far, far more than that. There is no Freedom Caucus in the Senate, but we have a group that clearly aligns very closely with them. They're very easy to tell. You can call any of us. You can go do some searches and look. It's pretty easy to tell. There's probably more split than there's ever been in the legislature between the far, far right and the people that are old Ronald Reagan Republicans. I hope that's not offensive to anybody.
I would like to add even more resources to that answer. There's two organizations that are tracking who is in the Freedom Caucus. One is Better Wyoming, and they have their measure of that. And there are, oh, is it 34 or 36 in the House right now? Or Wyoming Grit. And they each have pages that identify who's in the Freedom Caucus. And I would just warn people, you'll hear a lot of folks say, I'm not part of them. Well, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And these folks vote in lockstep. And the way on both of those websites are measured within like 90%, they have the same votes in a block. So a lot of mindless voting, just following orders. And everybody should know that on the House, they issued texts to Freedom Caucus members telling them how to vote. Okay? I mean, it is very orchestrated. Um, they receive their marching orders.
Thank you all for your responses there. One other question we had was, is there still an opportunity for funding that was cut, such as that to UW, to be reinstated later in the session?
Absolutely, there is. There'll be budget amendments come, both second and third reading. We're not sure appropriations is meeting on the 5th, and we're not clear exactly what we're doing there. There could be some things happen there, but I would guess in the Appropriations Committee itself, the odds of restoring anything other than the Native American funding is virtually nil. It was 9-3 across. Unless Senator Grew has different information than me, I'm guessing we're going to stay 9-3 till we get to the floor, and then the floor debates will be very robust. One other warning for people, your local Freedom Caucus representative may tell you, I voted against that. They play a age-old shell game that they'll allow a person to actually, when they know their votes, they know how many they have. So one of them will stand up and make a passionate argument for something in their home community, full well knowing that it's a dead issue before they ever started. It's just prepping for the public, and it's probably one of the most dishonorable things you'll ever see happen is to see somebody totally go against what they really believe to stand up so that they can go at the next election and claim they did it. We had it happen on both high schools last year during the budget and the year before, and it was absolutely incredible because you saw campaign flyers come out that says, I supported this, when in truth they did not.
Yeah, I guess all I would say, Kate, to that too is there's a long way to go in this process. This
Yeah.
is we're just getting started, just getting started. And so what the Appropriations Committee did in markup is what they did in markup. And now the whole legislature is going to get a chance. Now, that meeting that Senator Driskill talked about on the 5th, how it usually, from a procedural standpoint, when you finish markup, the staff, which we have a terrific staff at the Legislative Service Office, especially in the budget fiscal team, Don Richards, Elizabeth Martineau, Polly Scott, the rest, do such a great job. What they do is take everything that we did and write it in that 168-page bill that Steph was showing. On the 5th, what we have a chance to do is they say, okay, these are some technical corrections that we're making to what you did to make sure, did we do it right? Did we get it correctly? They're not looking for wholesale changes on that day. And what we've tried to do is keep that to a minimum. And the reason why is so then if we do that on the 5th, when we get to the Cheyenne on the 9th, a budget is on everyone's desk, the everyone and online. So you can see it and everybody can get a copy of it and really start to take a look at it. If we make a bunch of changes on the 5th, even that Indian Health, even if just a couple other things, that the staff will have to go back and rewrite. And if they do, then that's less of a chance that it'll be online and in front of you when we start. And it's not been that many years ago that that was kind of the way it worked. You didn't see the budget until the second or until that week that we did it. We try not to do that anymore to try to be transparent. So that's another thing I'd kind of watch out for is that they don't try to make too many changes for it. We can change it on the floor. The health care for Indian deal, we just need to what we do is we make an amendment in the House and an amendment in the Senate, and we call it a mirror. So we write it exactly the same and we pass it. And if both sides pass on, then it's in the budget and it can't be taken out by a conference committee. So I mean, that's a little bit inside baseball, but it's a long way to go, and we need to hear from you. And Steph's right. It's as much about the election in November as it is about the budget right now. We fixate on the budget right now. We want to make it the best product we can, and I know we all do. But I really want to warn people is it's like let's don't forget who brought us to this point so far, who brought us to the point where I've had calls from people I've never had calls before. People who start saying, I've never talked to a legislator before, but I'm really mad. A lot of those calls, and it's great to hear from everybody, and I really appreciate it. But we want to make sure I tell everybody, if you're mad, stay mad. The people that did this are going to be on the ballot in your community. Find out who they are and find out if somebody else may be running and take a look.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all. That's um one other thing was we had a question about kind of the budget surplus, and if anyone could expand a little bit more on that.
I'll start and let Mike finish. The surplus is a fluid thing because we're by constitution we have to balance the budget. The governor gave us a great balanced budget. It had approximately 500 million. There's been much more added to that now. We also have one other piece we didn't talk about is there's a healthcare funding piece coming from the federal government that's literally a huge one that has a bill that everybody needs to pay attention because we applied for that money and we have to follow very closely. And they're kind of wanting to play around the edges of it. And if we do, we can potentially lose it. But the money that is left over is all surplus. And it's up to the legislature to decide how it goes. And so a big part of it goes into permanent savings normally, but they fought that off, as Senator Gierau said, and we talked about earlier. This year, to give you an idea of what Wyoming's done with its mineral wealth and its savings, we returned about $980 million. About 35% of the general fund spending is interest income. So Wyoming's been rewarded very generously for being really frugal with their budgets and doing it. And I will tell you how I look at it because I hear, why do you have $30 billion and you're making me pay taxes? And mine is this, the state, we all know different ranch families that have done very well with minerals and they're all gone. And there's an old saying, please God, one more oil boom, I promise not to piss this one away. Wyoming did not. They've saved the money for my grandkids and great grandkids. And that's truly back for the future of the Wyoming. We all share in the mineral wealth, including future generations. And this has been a great way for us to put money away that's made it where our taxes aren't high like you see in other states. And so it's really justifiable. It's important to question your legislators about it. I'm happy to talk to any of you about it because it's a key principle of Wyoming going forward. If we're going to keep where we don't have a personal income tax or have taxes, our savings is what drives us to not have that.
And I guess, Kate, all I'd add to that is that this is your bipartisan moment here. I'm a Democrat. I worked with Senator Driskill during his presidency. Senator Driskill, when he was president, put more money into savings, more money into permanent savings than any other legislator ever. And we did that in the last legislature, and I was proud to be a part of it. And he led the way on that. And he's absolutely right. There's so many good stories to tell. And these people in the Freedom Caucus are always talking about cliffs and death and this and terrible and all the bad things that are going to happen. The facts are these. We have a balanced budget. The governor gave it to us. We've got a workers' comp program. today that funds every single person who has any been type of workforce injury that's involved with workers' comp is paid for. Not only now, for the rest of their lives. Over $2 billion in that fund. People are covered. We have a retirement plan where that is the envy of the country. In many states, they're falling behind and not being able to make their payments. Every single retiree in this state is funded for every single payment they're going to get for the rest of their lives. We've made those covenants. We've made those promises to people. We're conservative folks. I'm a conservative Democrat. Senator Driskill's, like you said, a Reagan Republican. But we've all worked hard to make sure that things you hear about at the federal level, oh, they're spending our kids' inheritance, they're getting rid of. We don't do it. We're doubling down for our children, our grandchildren, and their children. We're doubling down to make sure that they have the things that we need. We voted this year. One of the things we did add on to is Hathaway Scholarship. We've got a bill to raise it 50%. We just in case, we added a 30% measure in the budget to make sure that the Hathaway Scholarship Program gets more to helping working families send their kids to the University of Wyoming. So there's a lot of great stories out there. And once again, there's a lot of great legislators who's made that happen. And they too will be on the ballot this year. So look for them as well. Thanks.
Fantastic. Well, I think the last question, that maybe this is a good one to end on. But as we move into the session, beyond writing emails and showing up at Cheyenne, are there any other ways that we as citizens can help to restore important funding?
You want to take that, Mike?
Yeah, I think that you're doing it. The folks, the 27, 30 people that are on here tonight, and I know a lot more signed up. Talk to your friends and neighbors. Talk to them about how important this is. And like I say, if you can call, call. If you can write, write. If you can jump in a car and come over, if you live close enough to come down for a day and just say, boy, I want to talk to you for a minute, and just grab them out over my shoulder here. You can write a note right there, and they'll take it into a senator sitting there on the floor, and they'll come out and talk to you, and they should anyway. And just tell them how you feel. It's worth a few minutes of your time. If you've got kids going to college, if you've got, if you're worried about K through 12 education, if you're worried about your retirement, if you're a state employee or whatever, come over and take a minute. It's worth it. And like I say, it scares the heck out of the legislators when they see people come. We like to work anonymously and quietly, alone, and so when people come and start saying, "What are you people doing down here?" It's great. It just scares the heck out of them. So I recommend it highly.
Also, deal with facts. Tell them that the absolute facts. And if they're not telling you the facts, I'm going to encourage you to do something that's really interesting. Is you need to expose them. You need to go to social media or go to write an editorial in the paper that says this isn't truthful, what's going on, because this never used to happen in Wyoming. If you made a misstatement on the floor, you got up the next day, someone pointed it out and you said, "I'm sorry, I found out I was wrong." And we've got people doubling down on misinformation at this point, and it's really distressing to me to see someone that has been told 3 or 4 times actual facts or handed facts, and then you'll see them back out at a public meeting. And I'm talking about legislators, not public people. And they need called on it. If they're not telling the truth, don't stretch. But if they're not telling the truth, come out and make your neighbors and make the community know that they're not being truthful with your community, because they're winning off of that. The last round of elections, what elected a lot of these people were campaign flyers, and it was some of the black ads that you saw that Steph put up there. They were out and out slander and lies, and they cost some really great people in Wyoming their jobs. And it wasn't, we all live for our votes. If I make a bad vote, call me on it, say I disagree on it, I'm not going to vote for you. But to come out and slander and lie or do a misinformation is painful. And when you get one of those flyers, it's important that you go out into the local media and say, look, somebody's spreading this out there. Because a lot of them, she had names and states they came from, and an awful lot of these flyers have nothing on them. They're just black.
Thank you both for your responses there. We've just gotten another good one in. Would anyone like to speak about kind of getting registered to vote as we move into the 2026 midterms?
Well,
Let me grab that one, a little bit of that, and then maybe Steph can handle it,
sure.
and Senator Driscoll as well. But it's really important. And because of laws that we passed, it's more important than ever. To be honest, the Secretary of State has these, what he calls election integrity bills. What they are, in fact, is voter suppression bills. He's working really hard. He's working overtime over there in the Secretary of State's office to make sure that you don't vote. And he's making sure it's harder and harder and harder. I got to tell you, just today, he says people who have dual citizenship, who are Americans, who for whatever reason have a dual citizenship, they shouldn't be allowed to vote. What about our tribal people? They're all sovereign members of a couple of sovereign nations. Does that mean they're not going to get to vote? We took away their health care yesterday. Now we're going to take away their right to vote. People need to go and register to vote, and they need to do it now because I'll tell you what, it used to be, we used to have a lot of things where you could sign up to vote. You could vote in one primary and then switch back and vote in primaries that you cared about. Those things are gone. And you've got to have your ID, you've got to have a passport. I think you've got to have your mom come with you to say, yeah, this is a voter, whatever it is that they're doing over there. But it's absolutely incredible. Forget the fact that you sign an oath when you register to vote. An oath, just like an oath I took when I went into the Senate. You take an oath, but that doesn't mean anything to the Secretary of State. He wants you to have your ID. Oh, I don't have to show my ID before I vote in the floor of the Senate. Why do you have to? It's odd to me, but we need to register people. They need to get out and register to vote because you'll only have one shot at this. And so make sure that you get out there. They're purging people off the voter rolls faster than they ever before. If you miss one election, you're out. And you'll walk in there, and yes, you can register, but go down to your county clerk and just say, hey, can I check, please? Am I registered to vote?
Yeah, I was going to say, make sure you go. You also, the primaries in Wyoming is where it happens at. And I'm not going to tell you which way to go, but you have to be registered by a certain date. I can't remember what it is. We backed it way up. And if you're not registered to vote in the primary, you're going to be stuck. And that's the one that matters. That's for both the House and Senate races. That's going to be one that picks most of these races. Generally, at least in my neck of the woods, if you win the Republican primary, odds of you having someone opposed to you in the general is almost nil to none. And all the Freedom Caucus they're hard right R's. In fact, they're so hard right R's, they're changing the state party to try to purge out part of the more moderate end of the party.
Yeah, I would like to add that if you really want to make a difference, you need to be registered as a Republican by May 13th. And you can then vote in the Republican primary, which is where all the Freedom Caucus people are and where the vast majority of races are decided. But then you can still, in the general, vote for the Democrat. So I know I have a lot of friends that just have a tough time hearing that. But the reality is that the fate of this state in terms of being taken over by out-of-state influence of the Freedom Caucus is determined in the primary, and it's in the Republican primary. So you can always change at another time, and you can always vote for the Democrat in the general, but you will make your vote count the most in the Republican primary.
Wonderful. Well, I think that's where we'll end it today. But thank you to everyone for joining us, and another big thank you to all of our panelists for sharing your expertise and for your participation in this event. Remember to take a look at ESPC's Shape Wyoming online skill training and refreshers to help your outreach with legislators during the process. And then this event was made possible by individual donors, so thank you all for your generosity. And if you do want to revisit the event or share it with a friend, a recording will be available next week at equalitystate.org. But thank you, everyone. And yeah, have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.